Well, it is always so wonderful to have a chance to see someone who you've known, seems like forever, but haven't had the opportunity, the pleasure of running into lately. Well, I'm so pleased to introduce someone who I have known forever, but haven't seen lately. He's with Work Choice Solutions right in Bloomfield. He has extensive experience in corporate hiring, outplacement. He's an expert in human resources and organizational development consulting. It's so nice to have the chance to say hello to an old friend, Dave O'Brien. Dave, happy July to you. It's wonderful to see you.
Hello, Mary. It's great to be with you as well. It sure has been a while.
It sure has.
Once again, it's just great to be back.
Well, and so let me give you some public kudos, if I can.
Thank you.
My good friend, Marge Pacini, who is success coach on my Believe team, an amazing success coach, emailed me just last week and said she had been, you were a keynote speaker at an event at the Hartford Club,
That's
am I remembering correctly?
Yes,
and she
yes.
said, Mary, you have to know of Dave. And I wrote back and I said, I already know of Dave, just haven't seen him lately. So she was very impressed with you.
Well, thank you very much.
What were you talking about at the Hartford Club?
That was it was a leadership symposium that was sponsored by the Connecticut Association of Nonprofits in conjunction with Leadership Greater Hartford at the Hartford Club. It was a full day event, and I was given the opportunity to do the morning kickoff, the keynote on leadership, and I also had the privilege of being able to do a workshop in the afternoon as well. So,
well, Marge, who is quite insightful, used the word in the email to describe you, edutainer. Did she mention that to you in person?
She did, and I have to admit, I'm laughing because frankly, I've been a speaker for 25 or 30 years, and it's a big part of what I do. And in all the years of doing this, I never heard that description. And when I was a little bit puzzled, and I said edutainer, I think I know what she means, but I'm not going to assume anything. I've learned that over the years. Don't assume anything.
That's right. But you obviously were educating them in a very entertaining way.
Yeah,
I love that.
I thought that was terrific.
I love that.
It's frankly one of the nicest compliments I've had in a long time.
Well, Work Choice Solutions is Dave's business based right in Bloomfield, and you have something that you talk about which is really the soul of leadership model. Mm-hmm. And I love this, Dave. Would love to chat about it with you right now in terms of so many of the things that you touch upon in this are just as applicable to our personal life, our life in general, as they are to our work life.
It's so true. And, I've been doing this work for 30 years. The core focus of our work at Work Choice Solutions is really about developing leaders. And in that, helping organizations to maximize employee potential. And one of the greatest lessons that I've had about leadership in 30 years of doing this, I love telling this story because on one level, I'm glad that I learned it at any stage of my life. But on another, on a comical level, I kind of chuckle and think, why did it take so long? And that is only a couple of years ago, the thought occurred to me that leadership has far more to do with the choices we make and far less to do with what our job title says or what our role is. And it's a truth that I hold to be one of the greatest lessons I've learned about leadership in 30 years of doing this work. And the reality is everyone listening, myself, everyone that we know has opportunities, I think countless opportunities every day to demonstrate leadership. And leadership is about doing the right thing for the right reasons. It's about being guided by our principles. It's being guided by our values. I was thinking about your motto, believe in yourself. And I have to tell you, my motto has been for many years, choose to navigate. And navigating, of course, is the Navigator's Handbook is my first book.
Yes.
But navigating is really just what I said a moment ago. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. It's about not only understanding our values, but being very clear about how we live those values. And so choosing to navigate, and again, my motto is choose to navigate, and that is take the high road, do the right thing. It feels better, it feels better, it's the right thing, and at the end of the day, it gives you an opportunity to bring more goodness to the people in your lives.
I love that, and yes, Dave's first book is The Navigator's Handbook, 101 Leadership Lessons for Work and Life. And as you were just talking, Dave, I'm thinking what I talk about a lot and think about a lot is the importance and also the excitement, the power in the fact that we make choices not every day, every minute. You know, we make choices constantly, whether it's to be happy, whether it's to do the right thing. We have the power over that, and I love that. It's that self-awareness, which has got to be a big part of this.
It is. It's a big part of it. You know, so when I launched Worktrace Solutions back in 2000, that was a continuum of the previous 15 or 20 years in corporate life, doing the same kind of work with large organizations all over the country and around the world. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I began to look at what were these common denominators of these really successful organizations that I had the opportunity and frankly privilege to work with, and what was behind that? What were the common denominators of that? And what I began to realize over time was that probably first and foremost, the biggest common denominator was that these leaders at a variety of levels, not just CEO, but at a variety of levels, had a very high level of self-awareness. They were very clear and they were deliberate about who they were, how they could grow, how they could develop their strengths, their development opportunities, and they took the time to understand that. Beyond that, they also had a lot of clarity around their values, and that really stood out for me. It surfaced when I was working on the book 5 or 6 years ago, the first book, as I was developing that and doing some research on it, that came up. But it came up really strong in examining these different equations or these different organizations that I had been working with to look at, again, what were the things that really stood out, that were really very clear in terms of what was driving their success from a leadership perspective. And so it was the self-awareness, it was the values clarity. My word, I have to tell you, that follows that. I know that your theme for 2012 is go for the happiness that you are due. My word, I have a leadership word of the year every year, and this year it's congruence. And congruence is about not just understanding those values, but being really clear on how we live them.
Now, when you say values, are you talking about the values of the organization that you're a part of, or are you talking about your personal values?
Your personal values. Yeah, who you are, what defines you as a human being in all of your roles. What do you hold to be true?
I wonder how many people know what their values are. I wonder how many people actually have taken the time to answer that question for themselves.
It's a very valuable question, and it reminds me of your earlier point about Stephen Covey and the 7 habits that you were sharing with the listeners earlier. And
how sad that he passed away.
Oh, how sad. How sad.
Oh, goodness.
I've been a big fan of his for years. His son continues his legacy and supports his work in some of his work. It's terrific, to be sure, but one of my favorite quotes, I'm really big into quotes because they make us think, and one of my favorites from Stephen Covey is, the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. And what that speaks to for me is that it's critically important that we understand what is the main thing. And I think the main thing for me and for many of the people that I get to work with really centers around our core values. Who we are as human beings, what's important to us. And that's really the main thing. The main thing is understanding and having clarity around what's really important, what really matters. And I believe, from my experience with this over the years, that in most cases it's connected to our core values. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who haven't taken the time to think about it, realize that it's never too late. And it doesn't take a long time. And there's no wrong answers, by the way. I make that very clear with people that I work with. There's no wrong answers. There's no point in judging them. They are what they are. And you know what? It's not a bad idea to give some thought to. So what are they?
I think it's a great idea. And I am all about challenges. So let's throw out a challenge to everyone right now that if you have not given yourself, and it truly is a gift, if you've not given yourself the gift of the time to just sit and think, reflect on that very question, do it today. Yeah. Make sure you do.
There are many, many wonderful outcomes related to that or benefits of that, not the least of which is the heightened clarity around, so this is who I am, and this is what the main thing is in any part of my life. And that's another part, I think, another important point to make, that while there are core values that really are the central part of who we are, there are values around work, there are values around relationships, there is values around all the different dimensions of our life. And the truth of the matter is, the more we understand them, the more we invest the time to be clear on them, the greater clarity we have.
All right, so help us out here, Dave. Speaking with Dave O'Brien, an old friend, author of the Navigator's Handbook. He's been an outplacement. He's an expert in human resources and organizational development consulting, human development, and leadership development. For people who have never asked that question and they're thinking right now, okay, Mary, that sounds like a great challenge. I don't even know where to begin. So how does one begin to figure out what their values are?
I think it starts with asking the question, what's most important to me? I'll come back to the Stephen Covey quote, what's the main thing? Along those lines, a kind of an extension of that, I think it's also about, for me anyway, and I know I've had this conversation with others that have said yes, that resonated with them as well, and that is, what are my truths? What are the things that I hold to be absolutely true in my place called life, in my space called work, in my different relationships? What are the truths that I know, that I hold to be dear, that I hold to be important? Those really, in many ways, are anchored in my core values. And I think asking the question, what are those, and taking the time to consider that, and knowing, by the way, that you don't have to figure it out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But I, like you, Mary, I believe in challenging people to think about, to take the opportunity to explore these things. I'm a lifelong learner. I am blessed in the work that I do, because not only do I get to work with a lot of really neat people doing some really neat work, but I also get to learn from every single one of them. And I think what's important to note is that everybody has this within them. Everybody has that capacity, and they don't have to have the answers in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. I talk about in one of my keynotes, I talk about the 21-day challenge, and many of you know that conventional human psychology tells us that in order to form a habit, we need to repeat it 21 days as a minimum. And so I often challenge people to think about, what are they telling themselves every day that supports their success? I call it, what's your internal screen, the WMIS. It's from a story from the book, actually. And that WMIS is, what's my internal screen? And if you start and you look at it in that context and begin to think about, what are the stories that I'm telling myself, and how important is this for me in my growth and my development and ultimately my happiness, I think it's a really good starting point.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And again, the power we have over that, because once we come up with that, once we have that positive self-talk, if I can call it that, that's when our subconscious begins to be programmed, and that's when our life can unfold in ways that we've never even imagined. I remember, Dave, asking myself a question probably 25 years ago, and I was just trying to come up with what I was calling a guiding principle of my life. And the first thing that came to mind, and this is not overly complicated or sophisticated, but the very first thing that came to mind, and I remind myself of this all the time, one of my guiding principles is I always want to be able to, when I put my head on the pillow at night, to be able to get a good night's sleep based on all the decisions that I'd made that day, the way I related to people, the way I dealt with situations. So that's very simplistic, but not.
No, but powerful. My dad, a wonderful leader, a wonderful influence on my life, used to say, if you can measure your day by whether you'd want to see it in the paper or not, that will tell you something. And so if you can live your life every day and be okay with it being in the headlines tomorrow, that's probably okay. Granted, that wasn't overly sophisticated, but the truth of the matter is it's a good guidepost. And I think what your point and that point that my dad shared with me many years ago really speaks to the question of, so what's really important? You know, what do I stand for? What do I want to be known for? You know, in my work with leaders, I'll often ask the question, so what do you want to be known for? Because every single day, everything you do is about role modeling a particular behavior.
I love that question. And for folks who are listening and maybe struggling with, okay, how do I begin? Ask yourself that question. What do you want to be known for? You mentioned, Dave, your WMIS story. Talk a little more about that.
Sure. I tell the story in the book that I was on a project down in Washington, D.C. for U.S. Airways, and I was working with a wonderful group of people. We were doing a 3-day leadership retreat, and we had some wonderful conversation. And one night, I went back to my hotel, and as I fell asleep, I had this vision of WMIS, AM, and FM in my mind. And I had no idea where that was coming from. And I didn't, as an example, when I flew in from Hartford, I wasn't listening to the radio in the cab. I didn't listen to the radio or even watch any TV in my hotel room. I had no exposure to it whatsoever. And I really became puzzled because it kept coming into my mind, WMIS, AM, and FM. And I couldn't understand what it was. Well, I fell asleep. I woke up again an hour or two later, and there it was, as clear as day, almost like a sign. And when I finally quieted my mind, I began to think about, what is this telling me? And the thought occurred to me that the WMIS was, what's my internal screen? And every day, every one of us wakes up with a screen in our head that greatly influences where our day goes. And if we're waking up in the morning and we're frustrated and we're fearful, that's what I call the FM screen. And that FM screen influences how we interact with people. It definitely influences where our relationships are that day and ultimately how we show up. But by contrast, the AM mode, I came to understand, was the appreciation mode. And what I had believed for many years was that gratitude is a central part of what allows me, it's clearly one of my big important values, but gratitude allows me to show up and be more of who I want to be, more of who I'm capable of being, and allows me to look at things through a completely different lens that ultimately allows me to have more success in my life and more happiness in my life. After meditating on it and kind of thinking it through for a while, I came to realize that the WMIS, AM, and FM was what's my internal screen, and every day it's either AM, appreciation mode, or FM, the fear mode. And I've come to believe that was a message I was supposed to share.
And again, absolutely, I know you do talk about that in your book, The Navigator's Handbook. And again, goosebumps, because we have 100% control over whether we're looking at it from an AM or FM perspective. That's up to us. It's not up to the external world. It's not up to situations. It's not up to other people. It is up to us. We make that choice.
It's all about choices. The reality is, and I think many of the listeners will appreciate this, and it's a truth of mine, and that is that some days, because of all the outside external factors influencing my day or my life, some days, quite honestly, it's a struggle to get into the AM mode and shake off the FM mode. Believe me, there are days where I wake up and I don't feel as young as I used to be, and my aches and pains are more than they've been before, and my hair's getting thinner.
And
all of those things. And the truth of the matter is, I'm okay with that. But I know the truth. And the truth is, when I'm coming at it from a place of gratitude, when I'm coming at it of a place as in the context of the AM, the appreciation mode, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm doing a lot better, and my day goes a lot better. And what's not to love about that?
Exactly.
And some days I have to challenge myself. Sometimes I think, oh, this is nonsense. But then the deeper voice in me says, you know what? You know it's the truth. There are a few things you've learned over these many years, and that's one of them.
And one of the things, I'm sure, Dave, that you know in terms of why that's the truth is because when we approach each day from that appreciation, gratitude mindset, the day's better.
It's a lot better.
I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah, you're inspiring me to tell you the story of the Picasso sandwich maker. And this happened to me just a few weeks ago. I was at a client's, and I was in meetings all day long, and I wasn't going to take any lunch. And then I said, I need to have something for lunch. So I went down to the cafeteria, and I looked probably dazed and confused as I stood there at this large counter in the company's cafeteria, dazed and confused, looking at all the choices. And this server came up to me from behind the counter and said, you look like you need help. And I said, I do, because I don't know what I want to eat, and I have 20 minutes to get something. I don't know where to begin. You have too many choices. And she said, well, let's start by talking about what do you really like? And she started asking me all these questions, and she said, well, do you like ham? Do you like roast? I've got great roast beef today. It looks really nice. It's medium. I just got some horseradish sauce in. I could make that for you. I've got some sun-dried tomato wraps. And she proceeds to go through all of these descriptions of all the choices. And I said, I can't believe it. This is exactly what I want. I want a medium roast beef with horseradish sauce on a sun-dried tomato wrap with Swiss cheese. And then she said, and you know what would make it extra special? I'll toast it for you. So I said, okay, that's great. Well, to watch this woman make my sandwich, I couldn't help but think, you're like the Picasso of sandwich makers. And I told her that. I said, I'm going to call you the Picasso when I come in here. And she said, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. And I said, you made that sandwich like Picasso painted. And she said, well, I really love my job and I get a kick out of working with people, and you seem to be a pleasant person, and you make my life.
And you needed some help there, Dave.
And you needed some help, yeah. The point is this. That was a choice that she made. That was about feeling good about herself, taking pride in it. It was in many ways about demonstrating leadership. It was really about that. And so that's my Picasso sandwich maker story. I think about her. And of course, what makes it stand out a lot is only a few days later, I had the complete opposite experience at another location where I was trying to get some scones that I had for breakfast at this event, and they weren't going to give me any because they said, oh, no, we're all out of them. And I had seen them putting away like a half a cart of these scones that I desperately wanted. That's all I wanted for lunch was 4 more scones. But at any rate, there's the contrast.
Goodness. You know, you're right. That woman behind the counter had a choice.
She made that choice.
And what an impact she had on you that day.
Yeah. Too bad she's out of state. Yeah, she's out of state. Otherwise, she's far out of state.
It's in another state. Of your life.
Oh, yeah, she'd be listening to this show, I'm sure.
I like the sounds of this in terms of there are many days that you need to recalibrate your compass.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it comes out of the belief that I have, fortunately, through the work I do, I've been able to have a lot of clarity around what are my values and how do I want to show up and what are my role model opportunities every day. But I've also come to believe that because of the world that we live in, our lives are chock full with distractions. There are countless things every single day that pull us off that center. And so it came to my attention through thinking about this over time, maybe a couple of years ago, that unless I'm really deliberate about it, and there's the deliberate word, I want everybody to think about what does deliberate mean in your world. It means taking the time to pay attention to it, doing something about it, taking action, being proactive, one of Mary's favorite words and one of the words from Stephen Covey as well. And the truth of the matter is, unless I do that, I'm off center more than I want to be. And so every single morning of every single day for at least the past couple of years, I do what I call calibrating my compass. And I take 15 minutes of quiet time, no interruptions, sometimes in complete darkness, and I reflect on what do I have gratitude for today? How do I want to show up today? What's important to me? And what do I want to stand for today? How do I want to show up? What is it that I want to bring to every one of the interactions that I have? And what do I stand for? And then how do I live that? And that's the congruence factor. And I know that without doing that, I'm not as much of the guy that I want to be, and I know I'm capable of being. But being deliberate about it allows me to spend more time on that leadership path.
Well, what a wonderful thing, calibrating your compass. What a wonderful thing to do at any point during the day, at the beginning of the day, and absolutely right before we go to bed. You know, the power of having those positive thoughts right before we fall asleep, because that's, again, what our subconscious responds to while we're sleeping.
That's exactly right.
I love that.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's also a wonderful unscientific stress-busting technique. When we had the power outage, in the end of October, we were out, like many people were out, for 7 or 8 days, and it was getting old really, really quick. And I was testing every ounce of knowledge and wisdom I've been given over the years to stay calm and to be a good role model. And it got to one point, I won't go into the details, where I knew really for sure that I was not going to be a good role model. And
you had reached your limit.
I had reached my limits. Yeah, I was approaching my stress comfort zone, the thresholds of it. And the thought occurred to me for some reason. I said, okay, before I do anything, I'm going to write down 5 things that I'm thankful for right now. Before I take any action, before I respond to this dilemma, I'm going to write down 5 things. So now I call that my G5 list. And so that's my little stress-busting technique where when I'm feeling stressed, I'll say, okay, stop. I'm not going to say another word. I'm not going to take action. I'm going to write down 5 things that I'm thankful for right now. And I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised to know that by the time you get to the 3rd one, you're feeling completely different.
You're feeling like a new person.
And by the time you're at the 5th one, you're laughing. You're saying, oh, come on, why am I so serious?
Let's put this in perspective.
Yeah, let's put it in perspective.
But we need to do that. I mean, I love that example. We need to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Because the way life is.
Throughout the day, you don't limit it yourself to just in the morning.
The Navigator's Handbook. Where's the best place for folks to pick up a copy? Because they should.
It's in bookstores. You can find it on www.workchoicesolutions.com. You can order it through there, directly through my publisher. It's available online in bookstores nationwide.
Hey, Dave, thank you so much, Dave O'Brien. His website is workchoicesolutions.com. His book, The Navigator's Handbook, 101 Leadership Lessons for Work and Life. Dave, thank you so much.
Mary, thank you.
So nice to see you.
A great time to be with you, too.